fascinated one another, and that's what gives me hope. See, I've seen relationships all born out of necessity, tragic people coupled up purely cause they were lonely. You're not my missing piece, you're not my other half. You're an extra bonus heart I didn't know someone could have. It's like the space up in my chest turned into a nest up in the stars and made enough room to snuggle us up as a couple of starstruck larks. That's kinda beautiful, ain't it? Let's go and frame it. My fine art skills are crappy, so I have to use my words to paint it. I hope I've illustrated, even in the smallest bit, how much I love you, and when I say it, babe, I mean it. I really mean it, not just when it's convenient. With you, I've got an LQ that's bordering on genius. My Venus, my queen, yes, visions of you scenic. You're all I need, babe.
Still going hard to the best of my recollection. The man in the mirror, please peep the reflection. Love-hate relationship still leaves me guessing. But I got no doubt, like Gwen Stefani, looking 40 exchange like my name's Armani. I refuse to let the industry rob me. So you can get rammed or you can dodge me. Get it? Winning is my hobby. Chicks in the lobby, rent the whole floor, throw a big ass party. Probably do something ungodly, but there's no doubt I am here to turn it out. Shining bright like a diamond when your flames blowing out. Now I'm spazzing like Nick Cannon. Wildin' out, see I walk what I talk. What are you talking about? I don't think that is clear, you should figure it out. Bright like a diamond. Bright like a diamond. While your flames blowing out. No doubt. Bright like a diamond. Bright like a diamond. While your flames blowing out. Let's go. Believe in yourself, believe in yourself. Tel Aviv blowing up and you screaming for help. You gotta be determined like a refugee. You gotta be official like a referee. I wish you would, try and step to me. I turn into the Hulk and do so incredibly. Cross lands, cross seas, just to play y'all tracks. I'll be gone till November if I do come back. It'll be a cold ass winter if I do come back. But I have no doubt, therefore no slack. Black on black, everything except the president. It's evident the residents do not approve the president. So I'm preaching to the masses, a reverend. Cause I bless a track, and I'm heaven sent. And I stay 2 steps ahead like central intelligence. But I'm keeping the faith like Leo and the Reverend.
Always wanted this kind of outro. Wishing I could go back and tell everything I now know to a younger me. Looking up at 23, filled up with anxiety to overcome what's underneath and let him know he onto something, but he got some problems coming. You'll feel like you need a lot, but you'll act like you're wanting nothing. It's like you're paralyzed, can't move cause you're terrified. Mind inside a paradigm where you don't even dare to try. So you just lay at night, wide awake with grandeurs of a way of life where everything is perfect till you open those ungrateful eyes. It's kinda like your place to hide. So instead, you'll do everything they say to do. You'll get a corporate job and make 100K out of school. The music still be working at it with your far from perfect habits. I wish that I could tell you that everything will be fine, but I'm not really sure I'm qualified to, because I thought I'd know what to say by now. And honestly, I thought I'd be in LA by now. Instead, I'm wasting all my time like I've got nothing to prove. Sit alone and ruin my day just for something to do. And it's been the same for years without an evolution. Claim to be the next to do it without ever executing. I got a mixture of excuses and a list of resolutions, and feel guilty doing anything unless I've been productive. But time doesn't wait, so I'm just missing moments. I'm getting older without getting any closer. Every week I board another flight that takes me farther from my goals and leaves me at a destination that is hardly like a home. So now I'm out of sorts and feeling out of pocket. I'm drifting out of port, I'm set on autopilot. And just to pay the price so I can pay the rent and either pay attention or feel this pain again. And honestly, I'm terrified that I'ma die and be forgotten quickly. If I go out, I don't know if there's a lot who'd miss me. Hopefully I really have a soulmate, so at least I'll have a body beside mine to be rotting with me. My mind has been making all these obstacles. Some days I wake up and I feel like I'm unstoppable, and then the next day it feel like it's all impossible. The world is at my fingers, but there's nowhere else I wanna go. And last night I finally hit my limit. Liquor in my system, but never had clearer vision. Punching walls and throwing keys, glass shards and broken screens. I couldn't keep blaming life for problems, cause I know it's me. The root of all these issues is the lack of all my actions. Tired of feeling like I'm not committed to my passions. And as the tears flow, I had a moment of clarity, feeling like I'm finally hearing all the things I would say to me, like, I'm begging you to cut the acts in the annex. It isn't any kind of magic, ain't no rabbit and hat trick. It's just maximum actions at bats with natural talent. And it's gonna actually happen once you can axe the distractions. But right now nobody's nearing ya, and doing nothing is your mode and your median. You wanna flounder, you should go to aquariums. The block is mine like I'm owning Ethereum. I know you can hear me, but it's slow and I'm fearing you gon' end up like another fucking old bit of sneering man. Just walk around with absolutely no need for air and lungs. In Old Testament, back to times when Noah would pair them up. So please just for a minute put a hold on the snare and drums. Give me a moment to share the love, and if you're over it, fair enough. Just let me know now, do you really want the gold or are you here for fun? Cause if it's the latter, I'll happily end the banter. You can get on that plane and live happily ever after. But I saw the way you got up this morning. You haven't smiled since you stopped your recording. And I won't raise my voice now because I'm tired of yelling. Nobody's buying your charade, so why you trying to sell it? Said it's affecting those who love you and believe in you, the ones who wanna see you do the shit that you've been meaning to. So treat this like you want it or get treated for this problem. You can't go through life halfing with these clouds around your conscience. You know you need to live each day deliberate, cause regret is unforgiving. You got choices, now show me which one is it. And I'm not worried about the numbers or the press of the streams. Just prove to me that you can focus on your dreams. Or else just give it up and move on. Pack your bags and put your suit on. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. As much as you love me. I know the sun gon' shine in the morning, but I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. As much as you love me. I know the sun gon' shine in the morning, but I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. As much as you love me. shine in the morning, but I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me, as much as you love me. Yeah, I said the sun gon' shine in the morning, but I just wanna love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. I just wanna love me as much as you love me. As much as you love me. Sun gon' shine in the morning.
Yay! Welcome to another rendition of Blackbird. Welcome, as always. I'm Megan, still. And we have Micah, of course, and Joe.
What up?
And today we're going to be talking about voter suppression, because that's something that's going on right now. And let's talk about the history of it and how we got here again. But before we get into everything, Micah's got some housekeeping stuff.
So keeping it easy today. We're streaming still on Twitch and then here on YouTube. We have the Facebook page that Megan is moderating. So if you have any questions or comments, or you want to say hello to her, there's a link in the description, I guess, for YouTube. And then there's some links to some articles. And then next week we're going to talk about white privilege, which I think is going to be a really good stream. We're going to pick a different day.
Yes, a different day. We're going to do Saturday.
Yeah, so Saturday the 24th, and we're trying 7 p.m.
Yes. And that is, if you can't make that Saturday, it will be an ongoing discussion because privilege is a very deep and varied subject. So we'll probably do several videos on privilege before we move on to our next topic.
And that's all I have, really.
Awesome. So if you've never been before to Blackbird, this idea started with me on my Facebook asking people to ask me questions about race. So this is a safe place. We're not going to judge you or yell at you or scream at you for your opinions. It's all about education here. We're just trying to educate ourselves and you watching on, why things are the way they are and how they got there and what it's like to be Black in America in 2020. So that's where this all started. Today we're going to talk about voter suppression, and the idea for this one, I watched on Amazon a documentary called All In, which was really, really good. For me personally, a lot of things I thought I knew or I thought I understood, and that opened my eyes to a lot of things that are still going on. I guess for me, I didn't realize, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know how expensive it was until after I watched it. So that sort of spurred me on to like, let's have a discussion about this. How did you guys feel, Micah, Joe, about watching it, or opinions, thoughts?
Mike, I'll defer to you.
I think the thing about voter suppression that I didn't, because I've never had a problem voting, and I don't know anyone personally who has a problem voting. So I don't think I realized how big of a problem and like literally systemic. Like this has been going on for a really long time, and it's very strategic. The people who can't vote, there's a reason. There's a reason they don't want those people to vote.
I think for me, I knew about gerrymandering and things of that nature. And initially, the ID thing seemed decent. Like, who can't get an ID, you know? But then I'm sure we'll get into it. But just to see some of these other forms that I was unaware of. And as you said, Micah, the downright, in my opinion, audacity of these means by suppressing votes, and the public eats it up as this like, no, this is a good thing, this is proper. And the main thing, voter fraud, that seems to be like the catch-all to support these things. And I was appalled. And yes, very glad that I watched it. It was very informative. But yeah, watch the video and then comment and help us to figure out some solutions. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And so it's All In, the Fight for Democracy on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
So it's if you have Prime.
If you have Prime. And it's probably on YouTube somewhere if you want it. Okay, so let's start at the beginning, I guess. Right? So everyone knows, I'm sure, sort of common knowledge in if you were a slave in America, you couldn't vote. Because, well, at that time, you weren't really a person. So then we had Civil War, and then during Reconstruction, former slaves, black males, because, of course, we're talking about before 1920, so women weren't allowed to vote still. Black males gained the right to vote during Reconstruction. And during that time period, the U.S. military, U.S. Army, occupied the South and made sure that black males were allowed to vote. So this is 1867-ish. And then you have the passing of the 15th Amendment in 1870. And that sort of makes it the law of the land that you cannot discriminate against anyone for race, color, and then also previous condition of servitude, i.e. slavery. So I found a really interesting number. It was, so during this time period from like 1867 through the end of the decade is in the South, roughly 500,000 black men were suddenly given the right to vote. That's a lot of people. Who's, you know, if you think about it, who previously didn't have a voice at all in what was happening to them, suddenly have the ability to vote. So I thought that and maybe it's because of, you know, what we're taught in history, that there are not that many slaves, not that many people own slaves. That's sort of the lesson that we're giving. But 500,000 people is a lot of fucking people. I think, personally. So then you start to see, like, while the U.S. is enforcing all of these laws, Um, and so like the site that I found this on is predominantly talks about Mississippi, but it was very similar across the South. So in Mississippi in 1870, former slaves made up half of the entire population of the state. And so during this time, they're suddenly allowed to vote. And so you see Black senators and Black, state officials, lieutenant governors. All of these Black men are suddenly, in not just you're not just involved in the political system where you get to vote, but because you get to vote, you're represented in the system as well, which I think is a really interesting thing to think about. I think nowadays we talk about, representation matters. It's not enough to, I personally think, have like white allies in the government. I think that's a very good thing. I think it is more important to see people of color in the government. Micah, Joe, don't just let me ramble on, players. With me.
Representation does make a lot of it's not something I totally understand because I see representation everywhere that I look. But I do understand how it can be really, really powerful for children to see Black politicians, to see a Black president. I'm sure was something like totally insane. But it also, I think, the more kinds of people you have in the room, the more kinds of ideas that you have, the better solutions you're going to come up with. And I think that is really unique and something that we really do need. We need as much input as possible, It improves, Megan and I talk about this a little bit, it improves lives for everybody. It makes life better for every single person.
Definitely. One of those why diversity matters. So you have all of this going on. So during Reconstruction, the Black voter rate was at 90%. So 90% of the Black population that was eligible to vote was registered and voted.
Oh, really?
And that's huge. We don't have those numbers today.
Right. And so at this point in time, that was the height of it. We've got our not only officials, but that you got the ability to vote. You've got your representation in the government, local, state, and even federal. Great accomplishments. And I guess the South finally got fed up and, figured out how can we combat this legally or what have you. And so they jumped through some hoops, and that's when we get to wonderful poll taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1877, Reconstruction ends. Basically, the South convinces the government that they don't need to be monitored. We don't need you to police us. We're fine. And
anything changed?
Yeah, so the federal troops withdraw in 1877, and from 1877 to, I feel like it's, hold on, let me look at my thing.
Basically 1965.
That's the date I found.
Yeah. Well, so here, from 1870. So if you talk about Black voters during Reconstruction, you have 90% of eligible voters voting. By 1892, less than 6% of eligible Black voters are voting.
Wow.
That's crazy. And
that's crazy, but the tactics used,
yes, it's very effective.
yeah, they were successful.
Yes.
And sort of terrifying. Some of the stuff, so scary.
Yes.
Well, so I think initially, though, it's not necessarily terrifying. It was more of is it more important for me to be able to feed myself or go and vote? Or is it more important to have clothes for the family or vote? I don't
Sure.
think there was such the aggressive intimidation,
Mm.
but oh, all right. How you doing, Mr. Kitty? Good to see
Like
you.
that, you broke my lava lamp. Thanks, Mark.
Oh no,
Gonna have to sweep up some glass later.
Megan, are we going to continue or do you?
Oh, we're fine. The kids are
Okay.
asleep. Nobody's gonna be in here, and I'll clean it up later.
Well, so back to the thing. Sorry about that. The thing is that it didn't start off as aggressive. So I guess as more industry or maybe there was a pushback, which led to some of the more violent tactics.
Mhm.
Because it didn't seem to really those violent tactics came early 20th century,
Okay.
and so initially it was just like, oh, we're going to tax you. Oh, well, you're okay. So you're going to be able to tax. All right. Well, are you literate? Are you capable? And that's something at my discretion. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not even at your discretion if you can read or write. It's if I feel that you can read or write good enough to make an educated decision.
Yeah, and like
I
was reading some of those things about literacy tests. It's like, so these are, white poll workers who are deciding what portion of the Constitution you have to read, knowing full well that even all of white America can't read at this point. And so strategically, like, picking, like, you, person of color, get this, like, super complicated section to read, and white person get this, like, 2 sentences. Like, you read these 2 sentences and you're good. But if you're a non-white, like, here's this paragraph and you have to read all of it and you have to tell me what it means.
To be able to interpret it, yeah.
Right.
Which is like, and so, like, when I was reading through this website that I found, so it sort of said, like, Mississippi led the way when it came to this, and they rewrote their constitution. And at the meeting where they decided to rewrite their constitution, so just to back up a little bit, during Reconstruction, in order to be allowed back into the states, all of the Confederate states had to rewrite their constitutions and ratify the amendments in order to be let back in. And in 1890, after Reconstruction is ended, Mississippi and other states did this too, got together and rewrote their constitutions again so that they could implement these things, poll taxes and literacy tests. During this meeting, the leader of, like, the group, like, they're rewriting the Constitution, is quoted as saying, "We are here to exclude the Negro." So they had, there's no, like, undercover, like, this is what we're doing. This is why we're here. This is why we're rewriting our Constitution, because we want to stop these people from voting.
Talk about put it in your face.
Right?
Right.
I think that also said something about, like, these people were not afraid of backlash. They didn't have to, like, use fancy words or, like, talk around it. They could literally say, I don't want Black people to vote, and I don't care who knows.
I don't care what you think.
And that goes to say good and bad about the news cycle that we have now is really can't, well, I take that back. You can be subjective with it because, like, for the All In documentary, the fact that I won't say his name until we get there, but the two individuals that were running, the fact that one of them was in charge of the voting and you get to be a candidate, what in the actual F is going on here? And it's like, well, I'm sure he's going to be straightforward and honest. We'll allow it. You know what I mean? What the?
Yeah.
So frustrating. I mean, and the movie's great. You got to watch it, guys, but so frustrating.
So frustrating. And so look, let's
But
we know about, there's the poll tax, and I like, for some reason, I guess I thought that it was like a tax that you paid when you got there. Some of them you had to pay them like over the course of 2 years, had to pay this tax so that come election day you could vote. I thought it was just like a roll up to the election and pay this tax kind of thing, but they're talking about 2 years out from an election, you have to start paying this tax.
I thought it was like a door entry thing. Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was.
how many of their constituents, regular farm owners or whatever, who was just as destitute, how many of them were enforced to pay said taxes?
So here's like, because that's what my question was. And so I really like this website. And if I find it, I will totally post it to you guys again so that you can see it, because it was really interesting. This is where and I don't know if it originated, but this is where the grandfather clause comes in. If your grandfather could vote, then you didn't have to pay these taxes or do a literacy test. Which basically means if you're white.
The other one was the all-white primaries. So they said that Black people couldn't vote at all in the primaries. That was an all-white club. So like that was another way to get around it.
Wow.
Shit's fucked up.
Even more fucked up than you thought it was.
No, the game just gets deeper and deeper.
It does. It does. It's crazy.
One of the things that blew me away about learning about sort of these Jim Crow voting laws is you're like, oh, some of these sound very, very familiar. Like maybe I heard about it the other day on the news. It's like really happening.
Oh no, continue on, because my thing is more of today's nature, like some of the aspects, and so I'm trying not to skip ahead. I'm trying to let's get our build up on.
Yeah. So by the civil rights era, you're talking 1940 now. So men and women could vote at this point. 3% of the voting age black men and women in America that were eligible to vote were registered. This is 1940 now. So we've gone from 90% to 6% to the start of the civil rights movement in 1940 down to 3%.
And can I chime in just with that regard for the lapse of time?
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 world wars that we, as a culture of Black people, are not good enough to be a part of our own community and society where we live, but we're good enough to fight your battle for liberty and democracy in another country.
Yep.
And then come back here and get crap treatment and can't even vote for our own elected officials. But we're good enough to die for your cause, though.
Yeah. At disproportionate numbers, also.
Yeah.
Not throw that in there too.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we want to talk about the Voting Rights Act and then like how that changed in 65 and then into today. That seemed like a good.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
During the Civil Rights Movement, and then you have it's a great moment in the movie because that's when they talk about John Lewis, right?
Selma.
And the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that quote. I love that quote from Martin Luther King that they use in the movie. It's like, because the president is telling him that he doesn't have the power to change these laws. It's like, I don't have the power. There's not enough support in Congress for me to get this done. And Martin Luther King says, well, I'm going to go get you some power. And I loved that. I mean, it's a testament to his belief in what he's fighting for, because he knows bad things are going to happen when they do this, right? He knows it's not going to be as simple as walking across a bridge and going and voting. But he does it because he believes in it. And for me, that was a really powerful moment. You have the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which basically says, like, you can't do this shit anymore. Stop it. You can't intimidate people at the polls, and you can't require poll taxes. So literacy tests, it throws all of those things out the window. And you would think, hey, problem solved. No. Not what happens. So,
But it did help because over the next 4 years, we went from that 3 to 5% that you were illustrating from the 40s and 50s to back up to almost, what was it, like 56%, 58%, something like that, close to 60% in 4 years, which was amazing.
But yes, it's a huge, huge comeback. So, and that worked for a really long time. And so they sort of talk about in the movie, I guess, and then like Mike and I were looking, it's like starting in like 2010, you start to see the pushback.
Yeah. I think 2013, I think, is the big one where the Supreme Court gutted the the Voting Rights Act. So it removed a lot of protections for suppression and discrimination. So when Megan and I are talking about this, we're like, 2013, like what would have precipitated that?
What happened?
The second election of Barack Obama. It was like the first time was just a fluke. Oh no, they really like this guy.
We're not saying, but we're saying.
We got to stop this because a lot of people are voting, and they're going to undo everything that we've built and worked for, or I guess built and not necessarily worked, but stole and engineered and did dastardly deeds in order to build the pillars that they claim to have or whatever.
I want to plug really quickly. The ACLU has a petition like right now that you can go and sign that helps. Where's my note? So it's to like restore some of those protections. So there's a link and you can go add your name. Do that.
I will be doing that.
Do the thing. So this is for me, like we were talking earlier. It's been crazy at my house. So this is sort of where my research drops off, and all I have is the movie. So maybe you guys.
I think Joe and I are excited to do like what's going on right now.
Go for
it. Go for it.
So like things that are, when I started doing my research, Google like auto-filled in for me like voter suppression in Texas, and I was like, yes, please. I've only ever voted in Texas. So the way that it works, I thought was sort of normal. It is not. The voter ID laws in Texas are considered some of the strictest in the nation. And so that's things like you have to have a photo ID, like a driver's license. You can use a handgun license. I think there's a passport, and you can get like a literal voter ID. But for some people, that is impossible. They cannot get a photo ID, and it is not a requirement in other states. And sort of what Joe mentioned earlier is like these things. This sounds like normal, yeah. Like you need a driver's license to prove who you are. Like, but for some people, that is literally impossible because they don't have their birth certificates and they don't have access to it, or it's too much time, it's too much money, or they don't drive. So why would you get a driver's license? And in other states, it's much, much easier. So Texas is like on purpose is very difficult to even go and vote.
So one of the things that appalled me in doing a bit of research and watching All In was the purge law.
Oh yeah.
That and this is just another fact that I was unaware of, and I'll be transparent. Megan knows this. Micah, you may not have, but until the last, 2016, that's the first time I voted, and probably since I was like 18 or 20 or 22. Yeah, because I never felt that my vote was really that powerful. And I'm still, as we are talking, it's only powerful when we all have our rights to go. But when the system is geared to either make sure that your vote goes to a district where it doesn't matter, You know what I mean?
Oh, it's
Or
yeah.
it's a national for the gerrymandering and stuff like that. So when they draw the lines to where your vote is like
Basically.
less powerful than it should be to effect change locally and statewide or what have you, and then on a national level where they're purging people, or here in Texas, you've got one absentee voting location, one with mail-in drop-off or whatever per county. Some of our counties are as big as states. I'm just saying. Think of Delaware, for instance. That's a state or whatever. But down south, there's counties bigger than Delaware. And then you think of New Hampshire and stuff. I mean, we can fit those areas. And you're talking about people not being able to go, and so you alienate those people. As you said, lack of birth certificate. Or think about an Asian American who's come over here legally, has their papers and stuff, but just never went to get an ID. And so you've got their younger generations that are probably all cool or whatever, but they have a voice too, whether it be Asian, Hispanic, or otherwise. Some of the refugees that were naturalized and brought in, but for whatever fear tactics, they may not be able to go out and get IDs. It's absolutely crazy from what I found out. Going to the purging. So in the span of time that I never voted, always had the right. Never thought twice about it. If I wanted to go out and vote in that election, I just go figure out where my polling area was, and I would go vote. No problem. I did not realize that was a legit option in multiple states. And then you do the research, and people who have voted, whatever their parameters are, because each state has their, you haven't voted in the past 4 elections, or you haven't voted locally and this, that, and the other. Whatever their requirements are, you've become a criminal between elections, you're a felon now and disenfranchised. People are not even legitimately getting purged. They purged like 40,000 people who were supposed felons that had no criminal history or anything. And I believe that was in Arkansas. There was another one in Ohio where, Wisconsin. And I remember this on All In, where Trump won Wisconsin by like 23,000 votes or whatever. And they said 25,000 people had been suppressed through a purge or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, there is, like, they say you can't sue the government, but when it's so blatantly like this, where they're drawing lines and engineering control measures, that's what I think voter suppression is, not only holding on to power, but it's control measures to make sure that the people who are in power stay in power, and those who they don't like or are not part of the club, so if you will get voted out, and they can bring someone else in who aligns with, whether it's corporate structure, we want to, do ecological things. Like, for instance, Trump is trying to open up the Arctic, where, drilling has been banned. Now they want to drill for oil and natural gas up there and disturb the ecological environment. It's crazy, but you can't even do that if you don't have the people to support you to do that. And in order to do that, you have to rearrange the districts and do all of this voter suppression to get your, what do they call it, constituency, right? The people who back you and are going to support the crazy ideas that you have.
Right.
And the purging was just amazing to me. And Texas doesn't have purge laws, do we? We don't have purge laws, but trust me, as Micah was saying, there's plenty of other ways that we are making sure people don't get their voice heard. And I don't mind that we're a red state per se, but I don't want it at the expense of you cheating to do it.
Right.
And that's for the nation. Mm-hmm. For the nation. And I'm sorry, I took over for a second. Please.
Well, no, you're good. I don't say that was something that was super surprising. Not surprising, but like, it's like you say, they like all of the reasons that they give is like voter fraud. Like that's the buzzword, right? We're doing this to prevent voter fraud. We're doing this to prevent voter fraud. We're stripping away your rights to prevent voter fraud. Basically.
Don't worry.
Don't worry. It's and then you look at like the actual numbers for voting fraud, like mail-in fraud, ballot fraud, and they're insignificant. Like it's not, like you said, so like 25,000 people were purged, and those people's votes would have been enough to change an election. But the supposed voter fraud that they're trying to combat, the numbers aren't even anywhere near the amount to change the outcome of an election. So then that begs the question, why are you doing this, right? Like saying it's this thing, but it's really not.
No, and it's the Wizard of Oz effect. Look over here while I do this over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another point that I'd like to bring up in this modern suppression or whatever, which when surface level, it appears like that could happen, but it's not a big deal. But in predominantly minority polling areas and things, Hispanic, Black or whatever, you have lack of training with their staff and the polling workers, not enough people to work the polls, and then the machines most of the time are delayed in working, if they work at all.
Yeah.
And I think I remember in the movie the gentleman in the beginning who was disenfranchised. He went to rehab or whatever and gained his life back and fought for the ability for Floridians, because that's one of the leading states for voter disenfranchisement, not just suppression, but due to the felonies and things of that nature or whatever, and not allowing them to vote.
Just quickly define what voter disenfranchisement is.
Okay, so voter disenfranchisement is if you've been convicted of a serious crime or offense, you lose your right to vote. But even if you've gone to prison and done your time and you feel your rehab, you do not get your vote back. You lose it for life.
Forever.
Some states are for life. Some states are while you're serving, and then some states I think are like a couple years after. But there are some states where you can never vote again.
Texas is one of those states.
Yep.
Yes. Texas is a state. If you're committed of a felony, doesn't matter. Felony is it. You lose your right to vote. I think actually that has changed since, but it used to be any felony, you lose your right to vote, and you have to jump through major hoops, years and years and years of fighting to try to get it back, and most of the time you don't get it back. But that is voter disenfranchisement in a nutshell. Is commit a serious crime, become a felon, something other than that, you're not going to get the right to vote again. So in Florida, after bringing it to the state legislature, they shot it down, refused to acknowledge it. So they took it to the people, and the people basically demanded and got it rescinded, so that if you've shown yourself to be truly rehabilitated and a viable member of society, contributing member of society, you can get your vote back, which is powerful.
Yeah.
But,
and I don't know if you guys remember that, but I remember, like, I watched that. When it was happening, because it was right before the election, or like right after, maybe somewhere in there. And I was just really like, because I didn't know that some people were like just not allowed to vote ever. And so I watched that, and I thought it was really. I was like, there are decent people in America. Because it won by a lot, and I was really proud of those people in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, you might have screwed up that Bush election, but you're redeeming yourself here.
well, you know what it got me thinking about is, maybe somebody murders or whatever, really violent, aggressive crimes or whatever. I could see that. But within the system that you've created for minorities, in order to really get ahead or at least to live amongst the mean of society, you may have to do things like sell drugs in your community or what have you. Do dealings that are underhanded, but it's what you have to do to feed your family because of the construct that is created by the system that we're living in.
Yeah.
And then because of that, it's all part of the same system. Well, this is what we'll do. We'll make them do these dastardly things. And then when they do it, we can take their votes away so we can keep making them do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's a loophole, not a loophole, a cycle. You know, it's just an ongoing cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's like, and I think for I guess it's Micah or Batman, has anybody asked us anything while we've been talking?
Elizabeth likes the cat and the lava lamp moment. But I don't see any questions.
Okay.
What are y'all's thoughts on gerrymandering? I want your opinions on the gerrymandering because that's been going on forever, and it's still a very popular tool currently to for people to keep their power or to keep their positions if they're threatened to lose their elected position.
Yeah.
Don't understand how it's legal, and I never have. Like, it seems like the most illegal thing ever, and it happens all the time.
Well, so from a legality standpoint, for instance, Texas in the last 10 years is one of the more populous states. A lot of people are moving from California and up north, and they're coming here to Texas. So our population is increasing. You've seen it in the DFW area when it was Dallas, Fort Worth, Garland, Richardson, Plano. Now we've got DeSoto, Duncanville, Frisco. Arlington's very popular now. All these suburb sprawls or what have you. The DFW is almost doubled in size from where it was like 30 years ago. So you have to redraw the districts in that regard. It's the way that they're being drawn is more, there's a logical way, and then there's the strategic voter way where we can literally take a picture from the air and it's like, oh, well, let's have this alley over here and this neighborhood can vote over there. And we're not just going to make it this one square neighborhood, but no, we're going to rectangle so this street can vote this way, but this street can vote our way. And I mean,
I think that gets me is like, I feel like there should be rules. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Like we got the census, so we know who's living where, and this is how we divide up section, and not like willy-nilly draw it in my best. And that part seems, I don't understand how that's legal, you know? Maybe the other part is legal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, so, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was saying it's like, Brian Kemp. Was that his name? Kemp, something like that?
I think
just like his ability to run while being the authority of the election. Like that in itself is asinine and preposterous that nobody's like, well, if you're going to be a candidate, which you can do, you have to give up your position.
Yeah.
You have to give up your position.
That was crazy when they talked about that. So this was, for those of you who haven't seen it or are not familiar, this was the mayoral election in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes. 2018, 2019, or
very recently.
Very recently. And the incumbent, right? The incumbent? He was the mayor, right? Is that how that works?
I don't know. I don't think he was the incumbent because he had that other office. He was the state secretary or what have you. Yeah, no, they were both.
They were both new?
Yeah. Oh. It was going to be a new mayor, but he was not the incumbent.
Okay.
He was a state secretary.
Okay.
Over the voting.
Over the voting. So one of the candidates was in charge of voting and how the election would be run and how the polls would be open and in charge of all of these things and also running as mayor.
Yes.
And when they set, like in the movie, I was just like, what the hell? Like what the hell?
No, it's classic. You're right. And all the things that we're talking about nationwide happened in this one state. Poll areas being understaffed or not covering the majority of the district. Machines breaking down,
Right.
gerrymandering, absentee voting, and not necessarily purging, because I don't know if Georgia can purge or not. But like every tactic in the book they used. Plus he was in charge of it.
Right. And it was like, so it happened. I'm sorry, I forget. What's her name?
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams. So Stacey Abrams walked up to vote and they were like, there's a problem. And like, she's got cameras and everything and they get it fixed. And then she made a valid point. Like, because I'm in here with cameras and I have this, you know, authority, this presence when I come in, then you work to fix it. But if I'm just a regular person off the street and I come in and you tell me I can't vote for blah, blah, blah reason, and I don't know any better, I just turn around and go home.
Yep. And that may have been your only time to go and vote. So you don't have another opportunity.
Yeah.
And say that happens to a young person, it's like the more you do it and the more you're involved, the more you're going to continue to do it. So if you're 18, it's your first time ability to vote, and that happens to you for no fault of your own other than they're making mistakes, and either intentional mistakes or whatever, you're being suppressed in some form or fashion, you're not going to want to continue that process. You're going to see it, especially in today's time. I took time out of my schedule to go be involved in this process, and then you tell me something that's unfounded and untrue, and I didn't get the vote. So now I'm not a part of the process.
Right.
Why should I continue?
Why would I come back?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as Michael was saying earlier, just another form based on the young part is here in Texas, you got so many college students, and it's a state-issued ID, but you can't use that. But you can use a CHL. You can use a handgun license, but you can't use the college ID.
So if you are a student in Texas at a state school run by the state government, your ID doesn't work. I didn't. That's insane.
Yeah, and again, because the younger, not to indict us or whatever, but I think the younger generation are more involved. But not only are they more, they would be more involved. They're more astute, and they didn't come up in the segregated area, because I think all of us are of kind of the age where at least a portion of our life was still kind of segregated and kind of like, you know, hey, black people are cool, but they ain't that cool. Or, you know, hey, watch out for white people because they may say that you all right, but in the back of their head, they watching everything you do. You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't have that. So I think the people in power are like, you know what? They're more accepting, and they will base their politics, you know, back to what it should be, which is, what are you going to do for the community, rather than, you know, are you going to just take care of our people and this good old boy system that's going on? And that really scares them. Going back to the 2008 election of Obama, you know, I think there was like 15 million new voters, and they were like, my goodness.
A lot of young people got out and voted for.
It's like, look at the power that they have. If we don't get this under control, we're going to lose the country that we know, and it's going to totally reshape itself. And it's all based on fear, I think. Because I think good things can happen if they allow the process, but, you know.
And I think that's important. So we have been talking a lot about minority voter suppression. But I think it's worth mentioning that the suppression that we're talking about that happens nowadays is a lot. It's not just minorities.
No.
It's young voters, and it's the elderly.
And the poor.
They want that demographic that is in between the age of like 40 and 65. That's who they want voting. If you are younger than that, they're going to do what they can. And if you're older than that, they're like, well, you're sick. or like you need help to vote, we don't allow people to help you vote.
The beginning of the documentary, they talk about the first couple, probably decades of voting, and it was white men who owned land. And I don't remember the number, but I want to say it was like 6% of Americans could vote. So like 6% of Americans were voting people who represented 100% of Americans. And I think that's what people want today. That's what Trump wants. He wants this very small, the white men who own property.
Yeah, that 1%, that billionaire percentage, to be the people who are making all of the laws of the land.
Just so bananas, because like especially this whole melting pot, there's so much going on. To have such narrow representation is bonkers.
Ridiculous.
Well, my statement on this, and I'm going to step back for a second, but I kept thinking, just mulling over this, and Megan, I told you both that I jumped further into the rabbit hole about how the cycle of everything reinforces voter suppression, or it reinforces the criminology of things to keep the suppression going, or what have you. But it got to it's people who are in power, and boils down to this: power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we're experiencing right now, is because of the cronyism and the lack of term limits. And you have, as far as Joe Biden, 47 years in the political arena. I don't know if he's done good or not. I know he's with Obama, but Megan, this goes back to another thing that I thought that we would talk about maybe at another point. But I don't know him to have done great works on either side. He's just kind of, I'm a politician and I'm just going to be here for 47 years riding the wave.
Yeah.
And that's what allows these things to take effect and to take place. And
yeah,
that's another thing outside.
I was saying, like, in agreement with you, like Micah and I were talking about that too. It's that, like, even though it sounds anti-democracy or whatever, but I feel like there should be, like, we have term limits on the presidency. Why don't we have term limits anywhere else in our government? Why can someone be elected to Congress in their 40s and still be there in their 80s?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How can you still represent the people when you haven't talked to a person outside of, Washington, D.C. in 40 years?
It's very isolated.
Touch.
I was going to say, I think a lot of them are out of touch. It's very isolated.
Yeah.
There's no grassroots anymore to get out and speak and be with the people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we've been on here for about an hour. Do you want to wrap it up?
I think that, like, as like a closing note, so today is the first day of early voting. It's very exciting. And I haven't seen any numbers yet, but I have seen a lot of, like, the line was like 4 blocks long, or I had to wait an hour and a half. I know this tends to happen on the very first day, but it seems bigger, that there are more people out and voting today, which is very exciting. So I'm a little hopeful.
Yes. I'm gonna say I went and voted today. I went and voted. So my in-laws live in a gated community of retirement people, but they have an early voting location in there. So I went and voted in there because I was like, and it was super fast for me. So I would say, if you live in the Denton area and you're on the Facebook, hit me up and I'll tell you where you could go vote early and avoid the lines.
Oh, there's a website. I'll find it and you can put it on Facebook where you can look up, like, real time. Like, this is an hour wait. This place is 3 minutes. I'll find it and post it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'll put that on Facebook. And probably just share that to my page too, because that's useful information.
Absolutely.
Right.
Outside of that, people just use your right, use the vote. Take it from a person from me who hated the vote and didn't think it matters. If you want it to stay the same, or if you want it to change, whatever you want to vote for, just make your voice heard.
Yes.
Because the system's not going to work unless we use our voice, and our voice to change anything about it at all is to vote. So please do that. I'm actually going next Monday because I want my girls to see us to vote together. Start them early, you know?
Let's say, so yeah, in closing, I think, like, I love what you guys both said. I thought this was a really great discussion. Yeah, go vote. Go vote. It's so important. And it's whether you're a minority or a woman or, you know, anyone really, a young person, an old person, the way to beat the system is to go and do it.
Oh, you know what? One more thing. I had an idea. If you can, go out, rent a van, and take the people who can't get to the polls. You be the guy to take them. I'm going to try to do this. If people can't vote in my area, I'm going to give them rides to go vote. I'm not going to influence their vote. Just be like, you want to go in and vote? You can't take public transportation? You don't have a car? Let's go. Give a ride to somebody. Help.
I did that on my Facebook also. I posted, like, I'm a stay-at-home mom. If you need a ride, I can be your ride. If you want somebody, like, I'm a mom, and I know you don't know me, but I got kids, and I can watch your kids while you go vote, if that's what you need to do. Because I think, and for anybody who's watching, I think if you can be the person who helps someone get to vote, be that person.
Just help.
Just help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So that's it for tonight. Hope you learned something or engaged, maybe inspired to go and do something about voting rights and regulations in your state. And wash your hands and don't be a racist.